Hey, welcome guys. So today we have our finished Tamiya, the Hanomag, for lack of better terms, half track. Right? It's how we all, at least how I know it. We have it finished. We went very, very basic with this. This is a sort of beginner build. It's an absolutely great beginner kit. If you are new to modeling or if you just want kind of that classic Tamiya rubber band track kit. It's a good kind of quick build, good beginner kit, a lot of different things that you can do with it. So we'll go through that step by step in this video. At the end, what we'll do, because this is actually one of the first kits I built, you would have seen the old broken, dusty version that I had if you watched the review of this kit. We're going to compare them at the end, and there were a couple things. It's actually really nice to build a kit that you've already built before, because you see the glaring issues that you didn't fix the first time. And you're able to correct them the second time. So really, honestly, minor issues that we did have to fix, but I think they do go a long way in just making the model feel just overall nicer. So we'll do that. We're going to use a can of spray paint, nothing too crazy, a lot of brush painting, and we're going to do some weathering, but we're going to keep it very, very light. So without further ado, let's flip it over the bench and let's see how we got here. Alright, so starting, we will obviously use sprue cutters just because this is a sort of intended for beginner video, being a start to finish. Don't bend pieces off the sprue. Use sprue cutters and sanding sticks or an X-Acto knife. I started this hobby only using an X-Acto knife. The downside is that you can take off more than you want and remove details you're not really trying to remove. So just a quick review on that. Putting the dashboard together, the steering wheel and this little cylindrical item, to the left of it here, they're very, very tight in there, and they don't want to sit perfectly. The best thing I can tell you to do is to just move that cylindrical item a little bit to the left, a little bit out of the way. There will be a slight gap, but you will never be able to notice it when you have the top of this on. So it's a little bit, concerning when it's the first piece you put on, but don't worry, you can't see it. At least you won't be able to see, the little gap. Then we have a couple pieces of these, like the shifting knobs and stuff to put on here. This will also be a little bit tight, so I would, recommend putting the dashboard on immediately after this so that you can bend them out of the way. Again, if they are touching it, not a big deal. You won't be able to see it, but this will at least give you some time. As you can see there, it's a really, really tight fit. Once we have that put together, we're going to go ahead and put our benches in. These don't really have a locator or anything to tell you that they're level, but for some reason they almost just sit perfectly. You can see here you need to manipulate them just a little bit as they're drying, but nothing too crazy. It really does go together very well. A couple boxes and things that we're going to get glued inside on the interior here. And a couple pieces are going to need tweezers. But once we have that is primarily the interior of the vehicle. There's a couple more pieces we'll put on, but next up we're going to do the suspension. Now, there are some very large, losing the term, seam lines. There we go. There's some very large seam lines on these pieces of suspension. You will not see them once the wheels and tracks are on. It is probably good practice to remove them. I did not. I built this over the course of like a weekend. So I looked at the old one that I had built and I couldn't see any of the seam lines, but they are very, very large and they would be quite a lot of work to remove completely, to be honest. Other than that, you just have to pay attention because they are alternating pieces of suspension, the arms. So you just have to make sure, take your time, that you're gluing them in the right place, or else the wheels are going to fit a little bit wonky. Once we have all those in place, we're going to go ahead and glue the interior in. It does fit pretty well. There are some gaps, as you can see here, where I'm putting the glue now. But if it's a big deal, I end up putting some surfacer putty in there. You won't really see it, but it is definitely one of those things that you can do to kind of elevate this model. Looking at the old one I had built, I did not do that because I didn't use putty at the time. I don't even think I knew what putty was. This might have been the second kit I built, but it definitely goes a long way to just making it look a lot nicer. Then we'll get all of the wheels built up. There are a couple different kinds of wheels in here. We have our front wheels, road wheels, idlers. There's a lot of sanding and stuff that has to be done. Some of these wheels are two pieces, and then some of them will attach and become two pieces at the end. But we need to leave them singular, to get all of the wheels on there, which you'll see in a second here. Couple small pieces on the back with the tow hitch there. I like to put glue. Whenever I'm handling small pieces, I like to put glue down before. It just kind of acts as a binder. I mean, it's literally a glue, but it helps the piece from falling off. The Tamiya Extra Thin really does almost stick immediately, at least in most cases. Then we have our front suspension arm. Now, you can make this workable if you want. I made my first one workable, and it is very wobbly. Unless you were intending to put this in a diorama and display the wheels at a turn position, I would not recommend making it workable. I don't know if that's where the kit shows its age, if that's the best way to put it. It works, but it doesn't work well in my opinion. And you'll see at the very end how wobbly the wheels on my original were. So we're just going to go ahead, we're going to build that up, and we're going to make it solid. We're going to glue every piece in, even the pieces it says not to glue. And we're going to do the same with the wheels here. We're going to make sure that all of our wheels are very well glued to the kit. You do have to take your time here and make sure, like I'm doing there, that everything is straight. The interior wheels don't matter quite as much, but just good practice. And of course, as we work to the outside, we want to make sure that everything is lined up. I did have a lot of problems with the original kit where I guess I just didn't cement the road wheels good enough, or I tried to leave the pieces that I'm gluing on now, attached to the back without attaching it to the suspension, just to make it able to move, and again, far too wobbly. So once we have that all built and the wheels attached, you can see some of the putty I put in there just to make it so there's no seam. I didn't go crazy with it. We're going to spray it with our Tamiya surface primer. Now this is the fine surface primer. I like using the light gray, especially on this, kind of dark gray plastic with the dark gray color going over it. It's just going to allow us to see what and if anything that we missed. So I'm not going to go on the whole kit here. The aim is that we have an interior that we need to paint, and we're just going to spray the interior basically for the sole purpose of painting the dashboard. The kind of shape of this kit, once it's put together, I didn't even need to mask anything off. So that's good. It's a lot of save time on that part. Putting in these kind of vision ports on the top here, I wish I had done that before I primed. That is definitely an opportunity to putty up those, kind of marks that you see there. But again, you really only notice it if you really look at it. So trying to do this build quickly, I just decided to move forward. Once that primer is set up, we're going to come in with, this is the German dark gray from Tamiya, and just try to do some really quick spray paint lines here. This spray paint is phenomenal. If you've used, just the regular hardware store rattle cans, this is completely different. Just make sure you're going really slow and you're spraying, at I think it's like 8 to 12 inches from it, and that you're letting it dry. If it starts to pool and look really wet, definitely back off, let it dry. you'll be amazed at how well that paint kind of self-levels. Once that is dry, we're going to take just some matte white, and we're going to hit the kind of, I guess, speedometer and different meters in here. And just to add a little bit more detail, I'm going to paint, they kind of look like buttons in there. Not exactly sure what each one is, but we're just going to give them a touch of black. That way there's a little bit something more than just some plain old gray going on. We obviously painted the steering wheel. I didn't show that, but a little self-explanatory. And then we are going to paint kind of the leather of the seats there. I did put a touch of red on the speedometer. There is a little mark where, you know, it kind of looks like that's the overdrive, I guess. But as you can see, just a little bit of detail. Not going crazy. You could definitely do more if you want, but it is visible. When you do look in the back of the vehicle, it's just not that visible. So if you're building this kit, figure out just how much you want to do. It's really easy on some of these kits to spend a lot of time on things that you can't really see. Then we're going to get our doors built up. As you can see, you do have to glue in these little kind of indicator areas, these support areas for the main arm. We'll get our machine gun kind of mount here glued up. And we're going to put our doors on. This part, it feels like it's not going to work, if I'm being completely honest. You have to put the doors in and then lower the top on. And it just really feels like it's not going to work. But magically, it does. And I guess that's the magic of Tamiya right there, especially from a 1970s kit. You could easily make these doors not workable. And to be completely honest, they are a little bit of a pain to leave workable like that. They do kind of open up, but it is what it is. I wanted to make them workable just in case, you know, wanted to open them up or whatever later on. Then once we do that, as you saw, we're going to glue the back first, the back half, because even though this kit fit really, really well here, it did want to lift up from the front a little bit. So after about 10 to 15 minutes of letting the back half dry, we're going to come back, pinch the front, as you saw a second ago, and we're going to glue the front down. As that front is drying, we're going to attach the kind of front plate here that goes over the engine area, or transmission, I guess. And we're going to get that glued into place. This does fit very well, but you'll see in a second here, there was a slight gap that I did have to end up putting a little bit of putty in. I didn't go crazy making it look perfect, just filled the seam, you know, with 1 or 2 passes of putty. Then a couple kind of tow hooks that we're going to get attached in here and glued on into place. Then we're going to start on our different fenders. Now they're both going to start the same way. We have to make a little headlight support here, which is honestly pretty cool design. I know it's really, really simple, but anytime you're gluing stuff from the bottom up, I don't know. Again, it's just one of those small moments. It just works perfectly, and you're kind of reminded of why Tamiya has the reputation it does. Then we're going to do this is like the end of the exhaust. Now, if you look at that little, it kind of looks like a droid from Star Wars, that little elongated part sticking up, I had to end up clipping that. And I looked at the old kit too, because I built it so long ago, I don't remember. I think I just ended up smashing it, and it probably broke on its own. But I would recommend, we're going to clip that off later. It just doesn't fit, and you'll see why in a little bit here. But we got our tools attached. We got our boxes attached. There's not a whole lot to put on each fender here. But this piece is difficult. It has you glue it on much, much earlier in the instructions. I wanted to wait until the top was glued down and the fender was there because, again, I did a little dry fitting and I knew that it had to be moved. So you'll see there, I've gone ahead and I've just clipped that piece. that allows you to tuck the exhaust under that kind of triangular piece there. If you don't clip it, it's sticking out, which it's not supposed to be, and it doesn't fit. It doesn't look right, and it doesn't fit. So keep that in mind. That is a little bit of a frustrating moment if you are a beginner and you get to that part, you might not know what to do. I say just cut it off and move on. Then we're going to get tools. We have a couple shovels and things and some boxes. Headlights again that we're going to attach to I believe this is the right fender, if I'm looking at it correct, as well as the width indicator here. These pieces love to get broken, as you'll see at the end of the video here on my original kit. I have a couple German vehicles that no longer have width indicators. So definitely be careful with those, especially as you're kind of handling the vehicle like I am now. It is really, really easy to pop those off. And those are the kind of pieces, they don't just fall, straight down. They always go flying. You'll never find them again. Then we'll get the fenders glued up to the side of the vehicle. The fit on those is very, very good, to be completely honest. There's a little bit of room up at the front where there was a tiny, tiny gap, but really nothing crazy there. Then we'll get that kind of semicircle piece put in there, as long as our mount for our MG42. You can see I did putty the holes in the inside. I made that decision a little bit too late. I am going to do some kind of off-camera work on that. It's something I wish I did earlier, but again, I was attempting to do kind of a weekend build and just try to do this in like 1 or 2 days, minus drying time, and I don't know, I made more work for myself. So you can see I did put a decent amount of putty. I know it looks like a lot. That's the Ammo by MIG surfacer. It's the like ultra thin one. I'm not even going to sand it. It's just to fill in the gap. It doesn't clog up the gap or anything like that. It just makes it so light won't shine through it. And it's very, very nice in some of these hard to reach areas where you won't be able to sand, because you'll see once the paint is on, you can't even tell that it's there without sanding. Then we went ahead and we have everything built up here. So we primed the outside of the vehicle. Obviously there's some overspray on the interior, but that is fine. All we want to make sure that we preserve is the dashboard of the vehicle. That's the only area that we don't want to get spray paint. We also primed up our rubber band tracks here. You're definitely going to want to make sure that you prime rubber band tracks. Paint has a hard time sticking to vinyl, even with primer on there. If you watch the Panzer II video, I did have some kind of slight issues with, the paint sticking to the tracks. Then we're going to go ahead and we're going to take our German gray spray paint here. And again, short passes. I apologize. It is hard to film this in my little spray booth. I don't normally spray in my spray booth. I would personally advise you do this outside. But I had a comment a little while back. Someone wanted to see it being spray painted. So I went ahead and I bought a respirator and everything. And it was a warm day, so I had all the windows open. But their spray paint is very, very smelly. So again, I would take it outside or in the garage, something like that. But as you can see, their spray paint might be smelly lacquer, but it is very, very good. Keep in mind, this is a 1970s kit, so the detail might not pop, quite as well as maybe a new kit or some photo etch and things like that. But for what it is very, very nice paint. And to be honest, it's more difficult than an airbrush. But when it works, I think it works better. Anyways, my opinion. Then we're going to go ahead. We did this is Tamiya's dark iron. I don't advise you painting out of the pot, as they say on the UK channels that I watch, or out of the jar. But it was the end of the jar, so here I am, just quickly getting, we're going to end up doing like 2 coats on the tracks. And again, that's after we prime them. Then we have we have our MG34 and our 42 that we're going to get painted up here. Now, these are AK Interactive's paint markers. If you watch the channel, you've definitely seen me use them before. They are a great little kind of cheat code for this kind of stuff, in my opinion. So we're going to just use this flat black to get kind of that first color on our weapons. Then we're going to come in here, and this is like a gunmetal color from Ammo by MiG that we're just going to get dry brushed on here. The idea is that we're going to have the black and the gunmetal here. If you look at weapons from this era, especially the German ones, they're not black and they're not gunmetal. Maybe they're not quite this exact color, but they're somewhere along that line where I think this method looks really, really good from far away. Zooming in, again, good enough. Maybe you could take a little bit more time than I did, but I think it looks absolutely good enough at the end of the day. Then we're going to take some flat black, and we have a couple different areas that we have to get painted up here. The road wheels being the first, and these road wheels are very, very small, and they have very, very small kind of notches. So they are very difficult to paint. So absolutely take your time and go really, really slow. You can always go back and fix them, but I try to do it without fixing. It always just looks better, and anytime you try to correct, you'll end up overcorrecting. So sometimes leaving a little bit of a mess up ends up looking better, in my opinion. Get the benches painted up in black, and then we're going to take, this is a dark tracks color, and I just thought that this would add a little bit of detail without using any rust effects or anything like that. We're going to use this color because it is kind of rusty to just paint one coat over the exhaust here. I did see some pictures where, this piece was, rusted up very, very well. So just seeing what one coat of paint does to, again, give it a little extra detail. Then for the purpose of not using too many different paints, I did use the same gunmetal color on the headlights. And then we're going to take some white here, and we're just going to basically touch the top of the width indicators. Using the spray paint, you don't want to overpaint because you can go back with the acrylic Tamiya color, but it doesn't look the same. The pigments are slightly different. You'll never be able to fully correct it. So take your time if you're doing this method. You can always spray the spray paint into like a cup and then paint it that way. That does look better. The color is at least the same, but careful because the spray paint will eat through a solo cup onto your countertop. Don't ask me how I know that. Then we're going to go ahead and we're going to get the tools painted up here. This is a good example of good enough is good enough. You could go crazy and try to paint, the tool absolutely perfectly, but because we were doing it in spray paint, I attached the tools. I usually attach them later, but don't go too close again and overpaint. Just get the top of the tools painted there. Then we have our tracks. Now, these are a little bit different than some Tamiya rubber band tracks. They do not melt together. You just pull one tab through, a hole, and they kind of line up like that. That being said, I remembered them breaking, and I had to glue them anyways the first time. So what I'm going to do is just touch the bottom with a little bit of super glue. Once we have those stretched over the road wheels, we're going to, in like 2 or 3 different areas here, we're going to carefully on a toothpick put a little super glue, and we're going to touch the inside of the track where it's going to meet one of the road wheels. Hold that for a couple seconds with some tweezers there, and you'll get that kind of track sag. It's not perfect track sag, but it's good enough, especially for this kit. There's not a whole lot of area for it to sag anyways. But I think this does give it a much, much better look overall. Then I found there were the figures that came in this kit, and there were a couple, I don't know if these are their bread bags or what, but a couple bags, and I figured, hey, why not? Let's give the vehicle a little bit something different. I am making the same thing I've already made before, so how can I maybe improve it just with out of the box goods? I originally was going to try to make some stowage for the inside to block those areas that I had puttied up on the inside, but I ended up just sanding them and smoothing them out the best I could, and we're going to use the bags in the outside. I didn't like the way when I was dry fitting things together that it looked, so figured we'd give this a shot. And I ended up just throwing 2 helmets on there, and then as you can see, I have the guns glued into place here. And we are ready for, we're going to use our semi-gloss from Tamiya. And as you can see there, this is what I was talking about before. The doors like to open up. What I would advise you doing is closing them before you do all these different layers of paint. They won't get stuck shut, but it will definitely help them, be a little bit less workable, is maybe a good thing in this case. So I originally was going to do some different decals or decals than I did on the original kit that I had built, but I just decided I was going to do the same exact kit. So I'll use the same exact decals, at least, more or less. I think there was one that I put on that was a little different, just to truly look at them back to back and see, does 10 years of building models, does it change anything? And using some of these different products and stuff. Like I wasn't using Mark Fit back then, it was just simply water. And I don't think I was clear coating before then either. I usually did one clear coat at the end kind of thing. Tamiya decals, especially the ones in this kit, some of the older kits, are very, very thick. I know I say this every episode or every video I do, but I use water as hot as it'll come out of the faucet. It is steaming when I take it out and put it into the cup, and I have all my decals out ready to go. I just think it makes them work a lot better. And I let them sit in my palette there in water, just to stay wet and just do anything we can to get some of that carrier film to disappear, because there is quite a lot. The nice thing about this kit that we mentioned in the review is that the numbers are all separate, so you don't have to at least worry about that. We did also have some decals for the helmets, which is a nice little detail. It's small, but it is a nice thing to get in an old, simple kit like this. Once those decals are solidified in place there, we're going to come in with our Mark Fit and carefully put it on just the decal area. This, if you put too much and it pools up on the bottom of the decal, it can definitely affect your paint. So be really, really careful with that. Use a Q-tip or a brush really quickly if you do get some spillover. It's better to clean it up. Don't brush it around, anything like that. Once that's dry, we did 2 or 3 layers of the Mark Fit. We have sprayed it with our Tamiya TS80. Now, this is officially done if you didn't want to weather. We are going to do 2 or 3 very basic weathering steps here. So this is where I would have left off with my original kit. So part of looking at them back to back is going to be, what does a little bit of weathering do? Does it actually really matter? Now I have this blue for Panzer Gray, and I originally wasn't going to do a wash on this kit. I was just going to use one of Tamiya's master weathering sets, but I realized that this came in some sort of set that I bought from Ammo by MiG, and I never used it. So I figured, what a time. And it's an interesting wash. I've never used blue on a model before. It doesn't really highlight areas the same way that, a dark brown wash on a yellow vehicle will. But it leaves a really, really nice layer of kind of grime all over your vehicle, especially how we're going to remove it. We're going to remove it pretty quickly with a Q-tip. I'm not going to let, the whole vehicle dry like I would with some others. I'm just going to go kind of section by section. and we're going to remove it with a Q-tip. I'm not going to press really into, the recessed areas and things like that, but just try to get some of that thinner and everything kind of all spread throughout the vehicle and just move some of that around. But as you can see on the top of the Q-tip, it is really, really blue, which when it interacts with the gray is what creates, it becomes kind of a grimy greenish color, and it looks like a streaking effect, to be, completely plain about it, I guess. It's not really a panel line wash, more of a streaking effect at this point. I do like to touch all of the areas with the thinner when I'm cleaning it with the Q-tip. It is really easy to get these kind of darkened pools of thinner once the wash starts to dry. So to avoid that, you definitely want to kind of hit those open areas and not let them dry. I'm definitely guilty of doing that. I think we all probably are, of letting a wash dry and letting the thinner kind of pool up in an area. And when it dries, you're left with an area that just looks wet. But sometimes it can't be avoided. Sometimes the answer is to be a lot cleaner with your wash than I probably generally am. We're going to do a little bit of wash on the inside here just to bring out that kind of diamond plate. Now, I did not remove that with a Q-tip. I just let that dry and kind of be as it is. We're not going to do any weathering beyond that to the interior of the vehicle. So just to give it a little bit of something without it just being completely plain. I ended up doing 2 layers of this wash, simply because, like I said, it doesn't really show a ton in the recessed areas and the nuts and bolts and things like that, but a second coat definitely helped. Then we have this is just a dark brown wash, and I wanted to see how this would work in comparison to, I have the AK Interactive Wood Wash, but to simplify the amount of products we're using, because I am going to use it on these bags here and the helmets, of course, I wanted to just use one product. And the wood wash is really, really heavy if you're going to use it on something like these bags or these helmets. It goes on really, really thick. Then we're just going to do a quick pass on the tracks. I'm not going to clean it off the tracks at all. I'm just going to let it sit. And it's not going to do much, to be completely honest. It's just going to give them not quite a brand new look to them. The Tamiya dark iron paint it's really, really nice, but it just looks like, it looks newer than factory new, if I'm being completely honest. So this will just give it just ever so slightly a tiny bit of dirt to it and just make it look more like a track color than a metallic color. And then we'll go ahead, we're going to use a Q-tip to clean up the kind of accessories that we've added here. And then I'm going to use a brush on, there's only, I think, 3 wood surfaces. But the idea with the wood is you don't want to remove, you don't want to remove all the wash anyways, but here you want the wash to sit in recessed areas. On the tools, you want it to look like the grains of wood. You want it to look like a streaking effect on those. So we'll just carefully brush that. And it's not perfect, but it does give it at least kind of a multi-tonal look to the wood. Then we have our Tamiya Weathering Master set here. So the one that comes with yellow, gray, and green that I'm holding there is different than the other weathering sets. I like this one for basically just the soot color. Aside from that, I haven't loved those products except for this one that I'm going to use here. This one is different. It is a dry brush effect rather than the other ones are supposed to be like, earth effects and things like that. This one just works straight out of the, it's like a makeup case. I don't know what else to call it. Straight out of the case. And you can apply it in 2 different ways. One, you can use the brush here, which, as you see, I've used this brush a lot, and it's definitely showing that. And you can just brush it kind of everywhere. You can clean it up with this kind of more solid end, and it just changes the color of the paint. You have to be careful around the areas that aren't gray and around the decals, but it just gives the paint kind of a different tone to it. Then you use that solid part to clean it up, and on the second pass, I use that solid part directly in the gray color, and we're just going to highlight, the details and the tops of things and the rivets and all that fun stuff. This is not really any different, to be honest, than dry brushing. It's just nice because we don't have to ruin a paper towel. We don't have to get a brush wet, anything like that. It's obviously limited in colors. It's just 3, but it's the 3 main colors that we're going to use, at least in kind of the one-tone vehicles, I guess. And as you can see, it does make the details really pop. You can't really do anything after this. It will take this effect off. As much as this effect will stay on the vehicle, if you clear coat it, it'll just wipe it right off. So if you're going to use this, I would advise this to be your final step. And there you have it. We will do a quick comparison in a second. Couple different shades of light here to just show you, to just try to show, because it is a little bit difficult to see sometimes on camera. Usually shows up a little bit better with the naked eye, but you can see especially those almost 90-degree areas are really, really light, and it just gives the vehicle something. The vehicle doesn't look weathered. It does look like a museum piece here, but it looks good in my opinion. So here you have it, next to the original one I built, which obviously has some broken parts and quite a bit of dust, but you can see what the difference of just a little bit of weathering does. Now, yes, it is difficult because one of them is very dusty and one is very clean, but there you have it. 2 big things. As you can see here, the wheels, like I said earlier, super, super wobbly. Just glue them into place. If you're going to put in a diorama, get them fit how you would like, and then glue them would be my advice. Same with these wheels on the outside. Make sure that you use a good amount of glue to just solidify them in place, because after time they get wobbly and they're not really fit in there. And then the third thing is the track sag. If you can glue them to the wheels, it will just help the wheels be more stable. It will help from, yes, there's a little bit of a gap there between the track and the wheel, but it'll just look more natural. So if you've made it this far and you haven't already, I would please ask you to like and subscribe to the channel. We will be doing obviously many more model builds. I know I have the Comet and the Tiger that are both in the weathering stage right now. Those will be some of the next videos to come out, so stay tuned for those. Let me know what you think in the comments of this. Again, this was a weekend build. This was a rubber band track kit. Me trying to, get away from, I don't know if this is a correct estimate, but a 40 to 80 hour kit. I was just trying to pour in maybe 10 to 20 and to see, what we could do with some basic effects. And with a kit that I've already built, see, how it stands up to something that I built years ago, and if we can really make, if 10 years of modeling actually has made me better, or am I just as bad? But I hope you enjoyed the video. Please let me know again. I do plan on using this kit again. I think James commented on my review of this with the 37mm anti-tank gun. I did a little bit more research, and there is a way they are made to work together. So I don't know if that will be the next thing that I build. I think I'm going to go back to the top 5 list that I had. I know that Tamiya also is releasing that French light tank, which I am checking every day to see if it's available, and it's still not. But we will definitely do that the second it comes out, because I'm very excited about a light tank from a subject that we don't usually get. But I'll leave you with the tank, or with the half track here for, another 30 seconds or so. But definitely let me know what you think in the comments. and I appreciate you guys watching. We'll see you on the next video.